December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
It lasted less than 2 hours and still echoes in history exactly 82 years later. The surprise attack on America's Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii damaged or destroyed 8 battleships, hundreds of planes, numerous other boats, and killed more than 2,400 Americans. At the time, it was the deadliest attack on U.S. soil. The assault was a tremendous victory for Japan and one that led to its tremendous defeat 4 years later. Before Pearl Harbor, many Americans didn't want to get involved in World War II, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. But as news of the Japanese attack reached the mainland United States, Americans came together in common purpose, and as President Roosevelt put it, to win through absolute victory and make certain that this form of treachery should never endanger America again. Thank you for watching this December 7th edition of The World from A to Z. My name is Carl Azus. New test scores are sharpening the picture of how responses to the COVID pandemic might have affected students around the world. The results came from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. It's an international government association. It gave the test last year to hundreds of thousands of 15-year-olds in dozens of countries. The subjects it covered were math, reading, and science. The OECD says it had never seen a drop in some overall mean scores like there was between 2018 and 2022. The category of science has had decreasing scores for years, and the latest decline was in line with that. But reading saw a 10-point drop since 2018, and math saw a 15-point drop. The OECD suggests this is equivalent to the loss of half a year's education or more. The shutdowns of the COVID pandemic appear to have been a big factor here, but in part because science scores didn't fall like the other categories, officials have suggested there were likely other factors as well. As far as the U.S. goes, American students scored just a little lower in reading and science than they did 5 years ago and remained above the international average. Of the 81 education systems measured by the test, the U.S. placed 6th in reading and 10th in science. Americans ranked 26th in math. That was actually an improvement from their 29th place ranking in 2018, but their scores in that category had dropped 13 points since then to their all-time lowest level. And that meant that even though U.S. math scores were noticeably worse after the pandemic than they were beforehand, other countries were hit even harder by declining proficiency. And a U.S. education official called this, quote, another piece of evidence showing the crisis in mathematics achievement. Only now we can see that it is a global concern. So what do you think? To what extent did the closures of the COVID pandemic impact education? And what else, if anything, could be a factor in lower math and reading scores? Teachers, please share your class's thoughts under today's show at youtube.com/@theworlda2z.
World and out. Which of these world capitals is located the farthest north? Buenos Aires, Argentina, Canberra, Australia, Cape Town, South Africa, Montevideo, Uruguay. They're all south of the equator, but the capital listed here that's the farthest north is Cape Town.
Roughly a third of South Africa's workforce is unemployed, according to the CIA World Factbook, and the figure is almost 2/3 for workers ages 15 to 24. But some people in the South African city of Johannesburg have found a way to make a living by taking on a dirty job that happens to help clean up the environment. David McKenzie has more.
Tlamoke Mokoka and his cart are on the move. His job goes by many names here: reclaimer, hustler, even urban surfer. It's dangerous work in a dangerous city. There are thousands like Mokoka fanning out well before dawn. After an hour on the road, He's in a neighborhood south of the city.
I'm looking for the plastics,
I'm looking for plastics, cardboard boxes, metals and cans, he says.
metals.
And it's a dirty job, do you mind?
I don't mind.
What they discard, he recycles, earning about $150 a month. It's steadier than his old construction job, and Mokoka likes being his own boss. There aren't any jobs here, he says, so we've made our own work. Making their own work with the scale and impact that's hard to overstate. Just look at the sorting zone near Joburg, where thousands live. It's informal, but hardly simple. Everything is carefully separated, everything has value.
Towards the top of the pecking order are cans. Now, a bag of these will get reclaimers almost $40 US. As they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
I'm always surprised how rich people throw away so much rubbish, says Rakat Lakhang, but I'm happy they do. This collection took them weeks. I don't know much about climate change, he says. Of course, I'm glad we can help, but what matters is to survive. Today is payday, and every bag is carefully weighed. What reclaimers don't find end up in a nearby landfill. Even here, the desperate salvage what they can.
Okay.
Mokoka is proud of his work, proud of his effort.
Yeah, I feel so heavy.
I feel so happy, he says, because I'm going to put bread on the table.
On this date in world history. Some may be well aware that Delaware was the first state to ratify the U.S. Constitution. That happened on December 7th, 1787. The document was ratified nationally, becoming the law of the land the following year. This was the date in 1869 when American outlaw Jesse James made his first confirmed bank robbery. He shot and killed the cashier, whom James thought was responsible for the death of a friend, but the cashier was a different person. And on December 7th, 2004, Hamid Karzai was sworn in as the president of Afghanistan. He was the nation's first democratically elected leader. Karzai served in the role until 2014. Today, the nation is ruled by the Taliban, a militant group that seized control in 2021. At the bottom of worldatoz.org, you can access our shoutout submission form by clicking Request a Shoutout. Here's a class that did. From the Centennial State of Colorado, we've got the Blue Knights watching today. Mr. Smith's class is online at Castle Rock Middle School in the town of Castle Rock. And in the Keystone State, it's great to see Miss Cherry's class watching and decorating for the holidays at Lower Dolphin Middle School. It's in the borough of Hummelstown, Pennsylvania.
As the weather gets colder, the Wall of Kindness campaign could make all the difference. Adorned with heavy coats, the mission in Montreal is to make sure any person experiencing homelessness will stay warm this winter. A local nonprofit asks locals to hang old jackets on hooks to be collected twice a day. The goal is to grab 2,000 that can be passed out to people in need.
Goal achieved, and then some. That report was filed last month before the Wall of Kindness campaign ended. When it did last week, it had reportedly collected and given away 2,519 coats. And while this was one example in Canada, other cities around the world have seen Wall of Kindness campaigns of their own, helping bring a little warmth from one person to another. For our last story, I blame Nitro Circus for this. Stunts used to be simple, like jumping over cars with a motorcycle or going for a walk with a cat. But wakeboarder Brian Grubb apparently just became the first person to do whatever this is. Wake skate pulled by a drone across a rooftop pool, up the launch ramp, then base jump about 960 feet from a Dubai skyscraper to the beach below. He'd reportedly been planning this for 7 years, and while one reporter called it an athletic feat, Grubb said it was the sickest thing he'd done, at least on a wake skate. Now's the time of the show when I usually ramp up and launch or jump into a litany of off-base puns and drone on with them after floating some ideas, pooling my resources, and parachuting the breeze. It probably leaves people groaning in my wake, but at least you're not bored, because when it comes to puns, I grub all I can as the sky's the limit. I'm Carl Azus. That's the world from A to Z.